everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Email Marketing 101, brought to you by North Metro SBDC. Thanks for being here today. We will be taking your questions during the webinar. So we've enabled a question feature. It's on the right side of your screen. There's a GoToWebinar panel. So if you have any questions at any time, please just type them in there and we'll answer them whenever we can. And we'll have a time at the end for a question and answer as well. If you miss anything during this presentation, don't worry, we are making a recording and we'll post it to the North Metro SBDC YouTube channel as well. I'll send you an email afterwards with a link to that video so that you can replay all this content. My name is John Hovey. I'm a special projects consultant here at North Metro, and I have with me today Megan Bortner. She is a lead consultant for us at SBDC. She's also a marketing expert. She is the co-founder and managing partner of her own firm, Labyrinth Digital. And you can go visit them on the web at labyrinth.digital. I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes and in the chat window so that you can easily check out what they offer there. So Megan has prepared for us a great talk today about email marketing. I'm gonna turn it over to you, Megan.
Awesome. Well, nice to meet you all, and thank you so much for joining the webinar. In terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about why email marketing. Then we'll jump in and talk through the different types of email communications. We'll spend a lot of time talking through email best practices. Then we'll talk about some of the email metrics and how to measure success. Then we'll jump into a little bit about how do you grow your list and make sure you keep your list healthy. And then finally, I'll talk through some of the platforms we as Labyrinth Digital recommend for small businesses. And then just like John said, as we go through each of these sections, we'll take a little pause at the break of each section and take a couple of questions as we go through the content. All right, so why email marketing? So just thought, I know there's a million channels out there, and as small businesses, our time and our resources are very important. So when there's so many different marketing channels, we often wonder which one should we think about. So I thought a good place to start the conversation today is why email? So first of all, as we all know, email is really affordable. That outside of the cost of the platform and the time to design email templates, it's essentially free, unlike some of your other digital platforms where you need to have an advertising budget and put behind it to get results. Secondly, email works. As John said, I am the co-founder of Labyrinth Digital, and we work with a lot of scaling e-commerce businesses. And we've seen, I'd say about 75% of our clients, email is the #1 driver for their revenue. And then secondly, in that same mindset, email is a channel that you as the business or you as the marketing department actually own, where if you're doing marketing on channels like Facebook or Google, you're really at mercy of the algorithm behind it, where email, you do have full control over it. Thirdly, email is a channel that people actually sign up for, that they say they want to hear from you, which is great. So you have permission to talk to them and communicate with your subscribers. Fourthly, another reason for why email marketing, it's really a useful channel for testing. So you can easily have 2 versions of some type of email campaign and test to really see what works. And then finally, as we go deeper into digital marketing, email address is a unique identifier that you can use across your digital platforms. So as you're really starting to think about scaling your business, that having a big list of email addresses can be really valuable for targeting across platforms, as well as using that information to start looking for new customers. All right, so the second section we wanted to talk about is the types of emails as we're laying the foundation. So from an email marketing perspective, we see email in three key categories. The first being newsletters, or some people call it business as usual. And these are the types of campaigns that often are like product launches, sales, just your weekly or your monthly update about what's going on in the business. And the purpose for a newsletter type of communication is to keep your business top of mind with the subscribers that are on your list. The second section of email content is what we like to consider life cycle campaigns. So these are communications that are there for the customer that are based on the time and based on what their behavior is. So you can think about these type of communications often as welcome. So when someone signs up for that email, that first message they hear from the brand, or those email communications that I'm sure you guys have gotten that say, hey, do you still want to hear from me? And those are towards the end of the life cycle. And what's great about those life cycle campaigns is you can set them up once and then just leave them on and almost like set them and forget them, but you still have great relevant communications to talk to your subscribers. And then the third type of communications from the email perspective are the transactional emails. So I'm sure those are the ones that we're all familiar with. So you can think about those as when you make that purchase and you get the receipt or you get those shipping type of information. And then communications like abandoned cart also fall in this type. And one thing that's really important to think through on the transactional side is this is an email that you can send to anybody that you have their email address, whereas the newsletter and lifecycle campaigns can only be sent to somebody that actually subscribes and says they want to hear from your email marketing program. All right, so we wanted to take that lifecycle email one step further and just share different types of lifecycle touches that is common for brands to build out. And we thought this would be particularly relevant for the small business audience, as like I said earlier, these are the communications that you can build out once and then you can just leave them on. So unlike the newsletter where you're constantly creating the content for it, this is build it once and then it's good to go, and it keeps your brand top of mind and it's very relevant for your subscribers. So in the email marketing lifecycle, we like to think about it in the beginning. We call that activation. So that's when somebody signs up for your program, and it's very common, and I'm sure everybody on this call has gotten a lot of those touches, is those welcome communications. From a best practices standpoint, we like to think 3 is usually that perfect number, that you're setting the tone for your program. You're not overwhelming the subscriber with too much information in one, that staggering it off across the several touches is really great. The second section is that person that's actively in market but hasn't yet converted. So those are commonly communications where you think about your abandoned browse or your abandoned cart type communications. I'm sure a lot of you have gotten it. That'll say things like, oh, we saw you shopping for this, come back and make the purchase. Or maybe they'll take it one step further and they'll pull in review type of content to help you really know why you should go with that brand or why you should go with that product. And then the second half of the email customer lifecycle is once somebody's purchased, the goal is to keep them engaged with the brand and help them go deeper into that brand. So you'll see communications like reorder if it's something that you buy pretty frequently, or communications that are there to cross-sell. Say someone bought one of your products and you want them to go deeper into the funnel, you'll see recommendations on products that you could also buy from that brand. And then also other common life cycle type of communications, you'll see your birthday or surprise and delight, or when brands just straight up ask for a referral that, are you happy and would you like to let other people know? And then the final category we like to think about is the people that are towards the end of their customer life cycle, that they've only bought once, or they've stopped responding to your email communications. That's when you have those types of communications like, we miss you, or do you still want to hear from this type of brand? So yeah, this is just some of those life cycle communications that can be really, really great in terms of driving revenue and just one time to set it up. So John, I'll pause here, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them now. And if there's not, we'll jump into email best practices.
You know, I'm looking at the question panel, Megan, and I'm not seeing any questions. So audience, if you do have questions, type them in, but I think we can move on.
Awesome. All right. So we'll talk through email best practices, and where we wanted to start was just the anatomy of the email. So what's in blue, those are the elements that you see in your inbox, whether it's Google or Yahoo, and the from line, subject line, and preview text, those are all, the goal is to get someone to open the email. So in this example, you'll see the from line saying Bombas, the subject line is back to school in maximum color, and then the preview text is more pencils, more books. And ultimately, from a best practices standpoint, these three all work together to convince somebody to open your campaign. And then the next important part of the email is the top part. And from an email marketing perspective, that's where people are most likely to click and pay attention to. That top part is the headline, or some people call it the hero. And anything that you see in the top of the email without having to scroll, that's considered like the preview pane. And that, from a marketing perspective, is really where you want your key information to lie. And then just some other email marketing terms for the whole type of communication, that's called the body of the email. And then what we're seeing in this specific example, and not all emails have it, is a banner. So that part at the bottom that says free shipping, free returns, 100% money guaranteed. That's something that this brand uses in all their different campaigns, and that's called a banner in terms of email vocabulary. And then at the very bottom, that's your footer, and that's the legal information that's required to be able to send your email. So having an address, having that unsubscribe link, those are key information that you have to include in every single marketing communication. Okay, so we'll dive a little bit deeper and just look at the different parts of the email. So just like I talked about in the beginning, this is the part of your inbox that this is the goal, to try and get someone to open. So those three elements, once again, you're seeing the from line, which commonly tends to just be the brand's name, but every once in a while you'll see a brand use something a little more sophisticated. I think REI does it a lot, where they'll say like REI, and then they'll have a pipe and say sale, and that's just trying to cue somebody of what's in this content and get them to try and open. And then the other important thing for getting that open is the subject line. And you can see there's a lot of different variety in terms of what brands do to try and get you to open. A couple of common things that people use to stand out in the inbox is having not the whole subject line, but parts of the subject line use caps, or including an emoji in it. And then finally, that little gray text, that's the preview text. And usually you just see a little bit of that information, but it's just there to support the subject line and take everything one step farther in terms of getting that open. All right, so just a little bit more information around those three elements, just like we talked about from before in terms of best practices. That from line should be recognizable and descriptive to what your brand is. And ideally, you want to keep it under 25 characters so that it doesn't get cut off. And you should use that same from line very consistently, because that's going to help with deliverability so that your emails show up in the promotion tab, not in spam. And then in terms of subject line, just a little bit to think about. The subject line should be developed while you're thinking through the copy, that it should be almost like the thesis of your email, so to speak. And then, like we just talked about, just trying to think of little things you can do to stand out, whether that's caps or emojis, that can be really helpful in terms of getting people to open your content. And then it's really important, especially on subject line, to test that there's no golden rule in terms of length or in terms of message. It's just testing and trying a lot of different things to really understand what works for your audience. And then finally, on the preview text, is that almost second part to the subject line. The subject line is what draws people's attention in the inbox, but the preview text is almost that follow-up type of information. It's like your second chance to try and help them open your content. All right. So I think there's some questions around just in terms of an email newsletter template best practices. So wanting to pull together this wireframe to hopefully help. So from a template best practices, you want to put your logo up somewhere high, and you want to make sure it's clickable back to your website. The reason being is that content at the top is the content that everybody sees without having to scroll, and it's often the content that gets the most click engagement. So you want to make sure there's key elements to click at the top of your email. And then right under the brand logo in that same vein, we have navigation links. So often in like retail settings, you'll see brands put like some of their key categories. Maybe it says women's line, men's line, accessories. You'll see that often at the top. And then the most important content, just like we talked about at the beginning, you want in your hero. So for example, if you're running a sale, you want some type of imagery and a clear call to action around that type of sale. And this might be all the information somebody that opened your email might get to. They might never scroll and see what else is there. And then in terms of best practices, it's pretty common for brands to have a hero message, and then they have some type of secondary content to support it. So if you think back to that Bombas example, they had that module at the bottom that talked about guaranteed for life, free shipping, things like that. That can be really great secondary content that you can include in your email. All right. So in terms of thinking about that newsletter email, there's always that concern, I think, especially as you're getting started with email, is am I emailing too much? Am I annoying my subscribers? How do I make sure I keep my content fresh? So one thing that we recommend is really thinking about your content strategy several months or a year in advance. This can help in terms of developing creative so that you're not scrambling to get types of messages, as well as it can help you have a variety of content that September is maybe the back to school month, and October is going to be about fall. This will help make sure your email content's staying fresh, as well as it gives your creatives time to take imagery that you're needed for your email communications. And then on that same note, in terms of how do I make sure my newsletters are exciting and keeps my subscribers engaged, as you're planning your content calendar, it's really great to think about a variety of different types of newsletters. So maybe you'll have one that's focused on a sale, and you'll have another that's maybe talking about customer reviews, and then maybe you have another type that's more just like seasonal and showing off some of your products or brands that way. So just really thinking through how do I have a variety in terms of what I'm in my newsletter, that not every single newsletter is, for example, a sale, that you're really trying to vary your content to keep your subscribers interested in what you're sending. All right, so email marketing can be quite a bit of work, but especially as we start getting a little bit more advanced with our marketing programs, think about it's not just for the email, that this content can be used across a lot of different channels. So what you're seeing here is Barebones had done a 4th of July email campaign, but they'd also used some of that similar imagery where they posted it on social with the same type of story, but it's different imagery. And then they all tied it all together by having some 4th of July recipe and content on their website where they put all that content. So each of the different marketing channels were used to drive somebody back to the landing page, and all that content was done from just one photo shoot. And then they were able to get a lot of different reach across the platforms that they're using. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about email banners, just because I know as small businesses, we can be a little bit strapped for time. So this is almost a little bit of a time savings that you can do with your email. So what these brands do, and a lot of brands do, is they put together those banners, and those banners can be used in every single email campaign, so that you're always just developing the hero, and then you drop in some of that key information about your brand that you want in communication after communication. And some of the email platforms, and we'll get into that as we keep going, let you just save that banner. So it's really easy to pull it through, that it doesn't take a lot of work in terms of designing that template. All right, so I wanted to show this example, just as we start getting a little bit maybe more sophisticated with our email. It's from Sony, but one of the really great things about email is once you deploy the touch, you can see specifically where people click, and you have the ability to serve up relevant content based on that click behavior. So for example, in this email, it was last Friday, I got this from Sony, and I clicked on the headphones, and then they sent me a follow-up touch that was all about headphones, because I told them basically that I'm interested in that type of content. For us, when we're a little strapped with time, that could be something that's a challenge to maybe make 6 different emails just to follow up with a communication. But what that could mean is we look at the click data and we see the majority of our list maybe clicks on headphones, that maybe that indicates the next touch that people are interested in hearing more about. So as you're kind of building content and thinking about what to email, people have already started to tell you what they like, so you can follow up with relevant information. All right, so I wanted to kind of conclude this section with just a couple of examples of brands that do a good job of adhering to email best practices. And just a tip for the listeners out there, just following lots of brands' email programs can help you as you're starting to think through what type of content do you want to include in your email newsletters. So anyway, this is a brand from Getaway, and what they do that's really great, you can see that they follow those email best practices in terms of their header, that they have their brand logo at the top, as well as several key links that go with the brand. And then beyond that, you can see all of their emails have a consistent look and feel, but they have a lot of variety of different content that they're pulling into these type of communications. And then another thing that they do a really nice job of is on their call to action buttons, that they're really descriptive. So the subscriber would know exactly what they're clicking on if they were to click on that button. And that's something that really helps your emails perform. And then just wanted to do one more example in terms of brands to potentially follow, as well as just another example of a brand that does a great job adhering to best practices. So this is from Press Juice, and once again, you can see that they have their brand logo at the top, and then they have some of those key links in the header. And then what they do, and we talked through a little bit before, was that banner. You can see that they're using that banner in a lot of their campaigns, and that's one of the ways that they have a consistent message for their subscribers, and they're saving themselves work in terms of not needing to develop that module every single time. So I'll pause here, and I'll let John see if there's any questions, but love to answer any questions anyone has around email template best practices or questions on the specific content we talked about.
Nice. This is great, Megan. We have a few questions that came in here. So Karen asks, are you going to talk about batch emailing and how to do it? I have a feeling that's what's coming up next.
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time? Was it batch email?
Yeah, like how are you physically sending out these emails, different programs?
Yeah, so we'll get into that as we keep going in terms of platforms and some of the email laws and regulations.
Excellent. And Kevin is asking, I think the same question, what tools to use, CRM, HubSpot, etc. So it seems like people are eager to take what they've heard so far and move forward with it. That's great. Any other questions?
Great.
Type them in.
All right. I'll keep going. I think I have content that helps answer some of the questions. And then if they still exist, we can definitely leave some time at the end to go through them as well. All right, so Levin Digital is super data driven, that we like to measure everything that we do. So I felt like it was not complete to leave this webinar without talking about what are metrics that you should be looking at to know success from your email program. So there's a couple of key ones. One is open rate. So that is the number of people who open your email divided by the number of people that receive the email. So this is a metric saying how likely are people, how interested are people in your brand, and is your front line, your subject line, and your pre-header text working for you? Is it generating that excitement to give someone a reason to open? And there's a lot of best or industry benchmarks, and a lot of your email tools will tell you what's benchmarked for your industry, so you can know if you have a good open rate or if you need to do some work there. The second email metric that I think is really important is the click rate. So that is the number of people who clicked a link in the email divided by the number of people who received the email. So this is a really good metric to tell you if the content that you have is engaging to your subscribers. So did they want to click on that CTA? Did they want to know more about what you were giving them? So looking at this just helps you know, are you serving the right content up to your subscribers? Other metrics that we like to look at are more in terms of like the technical side of things. So deliverability and spam issues. So in terms of deliverability, that's the number of emails delivered by the number of sends. So usually you see that somewhere between 95 and 99%, but you should monitor this to make sure the names of the people that are signing up are actually good names. So if you start seeing that deliverability drop, it might mean there's like spam bots that have ended up on your list, and you'll have to do some cleaning to make sure you keep your email list healthy. And then the other metric to look at is spam complaints. So are people saying you're a spammy sender? That might mean you're emailing people that didn't want to hear from you, that somehow they got on your list but they didn't give you permission, or maybe in extreme circumstances you're emailing too much, or you're really emailing content that's annoying. And spam issues can be really problematic. If you get too many complaints, Gmail and Yahoo, etc., will start putting your emails all in the spam folder instead of the promotion tab. So that means you're doing a ton of work and then no one's ever going to see your content. And then finally, if you're selling a product, other metrics that can be really important are revenue from your email, as well as number of orders placed. And I know that's not necessarily relevant to everyone on this call, but if you're selling products, those are good numbers to look at. And then just wanting to give people a sample of what email reporting can look like. So what you tend to see is right when you send an email, you see the most engagement. So most likely when people open and click, especially if you're sending during business hours. And then email, usually it'll bring traffic to your website for the next couple of days, but you'll really see the big spike from that initial time that you send. And then this is just what some of those metrics look like we just talked through. You can see the open rate and the click rate and the orders, spam complaints, all in that type of reporting, and that lives in any email marketing tool. You can see that type of information.
Megan, a question just came in. David wants to know how to avoid getting sent straight to junk mail. He says that he used MailChimp and his emails went straight to junk. Any more about the spam?
Yeah, so we're probably going to talk about that right here in terms of list health, and hopefully I'll answer it. So that's a great question and a great tee up for this section. So it's really, really important that the people that you email have told you that they want to be on your list. So whether they verbally at checkout said, yes, I'd like to be on the email list, or if they were on your website, they clicked actually subscribe and said they want to be on it, that helps keep your reputation reputable. If you start emailing all your customers, the ones that haven't agreed to it, they might start clicking and saying that you're spam, and that's when you end up in the spam trap and you have to do a lot of cleaning to get yourself back out of it. So in terms of email, like best practices, don't buy lists. That means those people haven't given you permission, and you're likely to get a lot of spam complaints if you email those type of people. Secondly, email consistently. So if you email, say, one Black Friday email and then you don't email again till the next year at Black Friday, people are going to see, not even remember that you're a brand. You haven't gotten credibility with like your Gmail and your Yahoo, that they might see you as a spammy sender because they haven't seen people engaging with you over a long time. So if you do go down this email marketing path, make sure you're committed to the program. Just don't do it just one-off. Make sure you have that consistent communications in place. Thirdly, Dave, this might answer your question as well. If you did get in that unfortunate situation of ending in the spam trap, you got to think about making sure your list is clean. So if you're starting to see your open rates go really low, which usually means less than 10%, and really low click rates, that could indicate that you are in the spam filter and you're starting to send to people that don't want to hear from you. That's when you'll want to maybe manually scrub off people that have never opened or clicked on any of your emails and stop emailing them, as well as you might want to do some type of permission pass for the other people on your list that says, hey, do you still want to hear from us? And if they don't respond, they should also be removed. So it's just really important that you're only talking to people that want to hear from you. Otherwise, you do end up in that unfortunate situation of ending up in spam. And then just finally wanted to touch on, if you are sending people that don't want to hear from you, or you're starting to put a lot of false information in your emails, this is regulated by the government, and there can be big fines for emailing misleading information and people that don't want to hear from you. All right, and then secondly, like I mentioned, permission is really important. So you're probably asking, how do I get that permission for my email from people? So a really great option is the website. So you often see most brands have sign up for your email address at the bottom. And then sometimes you'll see brands that are really trying to build their email list, they'll often have those website pop-ups that'll ask you to join, and they might even incentivize you like 10% off your first purchase for an email address. Another way to get an email address is requiring it at purchase, as well as making sure someone's clicking, yes, I want to be subscribed to marketing communications. Thirdly, small businesses, I often see they'll run social campaigns encouraging people to sign up for their email list. So maybe it's some type of offer, and they'll advertise it on social to get people to sign up. And then finally, some brands will do a more like offline methods where at checkout, they'll ask, do you want to be part of the email list? Or if they're at events, they'll have people sign up to be part of the email list. So I'll pause here before I go on to talking about platforms, and want to make sure, Dave, I answered your question, and if there was any other questions in terms of email list health, because I know it can be tricky and really frustrating when you do end up in spam.
No new questions, but do check in with us, David, if that didn't answer it and you need more.
Awesome. All right, so just wanted to finally conclude the conversation by talking about platforms. It sounds like there's a lot of questions out there on that. So these are platforms, I think, makes sense for small businesses and that I've had really good experiences with, but there are a ton of email platforms out there, and most of them you really can't go wrong with. But in terms of if you're a business and you're B2B, so maybe you're like an accounting firm or you're an attorney, I'd like to think about it as I'm just getting started and I'm really ready to do a lot of sophistication with my email program. So if you're in that bucket of I'm just getting started, I want to start collecting email addresses, I want to occasionally do a newsletter, MailChimp can be a really good place to start. And the reason being is it's free up to 2,000 subscribers. So that's like super budget friendly when funds can be tight. If you're that B2B business and you want to put a lot of time behind things, you want to have a lot of automation, I think HubSpot can be a really useful tool because it really allows you to segment based on behavior. So if somebody opened this certain email, this is the flow that they fall into. If someone didn't respond, this is the flow that they fall into. And HubSpot makes it really easy to do that, as well as they have a lot of resources out there for training people in terms of email automation. If you're on the B2C side, so you're selling a product or we recommend, once again, MailChimp if you're more at that basic level of I just want to have a newsletter and a basic welcome flow for the same reasons as the B2B, that it is free up to the 2,000 subscribers. So it's a really good way to test the waters to see if email's a channel that works for your business. And the more sophisticated small business email tool is Klaviyo. That I think it's just very powerful that it has the ability to not email list based but profile based. So it really gives you that opportunity to do one-to-one messaging, as well as Klaviyo syncs with a lot of other digital marketing platforms, like for example Facebook. So if someone didn't open your email, you can have them have that same message in Facebook so that you're making sure you get across it. But it's a little bit more sophisticated. You have to be a little bit more comfortable with data and email before advancing to a Klaviyo type of platform. And then finally, if you're a nonprofit, Constant Contact actually has some discount in pricing. So that could be a really good platform to look for if you do fall into that category. And then just all of these platforms, what they have in common is they're really user-friendly, that you don't have to be able to code to do things. It's all drag and drop in terms of the templates. They all make it really easy for testing and segmentation. They integrate with a lot of the key other tech stacks that are out there, and they all have some type of support, whether that's chat, email, or the ability to call in, depending on what plan you're on. Awesome. So yeah, just thought a good place to end the webinar before we go into questions was just some resources that we think are really helpful out there for email marketing. So like I mentioned, and as we looked at examples, I think subscribing to brands and seeing what they're doing in terms of their content strategy and email design can be really important. So some of the brands that I follow and I think do a really great job include Beard Brand, Yeti, Bombas, Kind, and Fabletics, as well as with some resources out there that are great for, like, I'm in the spam trap, what do I do? Or what's a good open rate? What's a bad open rate? Some of those resources are really good, include Campaign Monitor, Litmus, and Emma. And then finally, if you're just looking for email creative examples, there's a website out there called Really Good Emails. And you can sort by anything. So you could say, I want to see an abandoned cart email. I want to see a welcome series. It lets you sort by it, and then you can get a lot of creative for that. So yeah, hopefully this content is helpful. I'd love to leave a little bit of time if there's more questions.
Well, let's see. Type them in, folks, if you have any questions. Cami did type in. She says that she had the same issue with MailChimp emails going to junk, and she had to verify and connect her domain. So it was sending from her domain instead of the domain via MailChimp. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so if you do have your own domain, you can send versus off the shared domain. So it's actually like kind of keeping credit with Gmail and Yahoo. So if you're sending off of the MailChimp domain, you're also lumped in with all the other brands sending off of the MailChimp domain. So if they're doing a poor job, if there's other brands on MailChimp that aren't adhering to email best practices, that could affect your deliverability because you're coming off of the same domain as them. But the bigger portion of it is your list wanting to hear from you, and are you getting that marked as like spam complaints or lots of unsubscribes? So it could have been a lot of factors that caused you to end up in the spam.
Gotcha. Kemi also writes, "Thank you, Megan. This is useful and practical information. Excited to try it out." So good job there.
Great.
Michelle asks, how do you test email subjects and how much time is required for testing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in all of the platforms that we recommended, as well as I don't know any email provider that doesn't give you the ability to test. When you're getting ready to schedule the campaign, if it's say a newsletter, it'll give you the option for A/B testing. So you'd put in exactly the same newsletter template, but the subject line would be different for the A and the B version. And then you'll send it out that way, and the MailChimp will split it 50-50, or Klaviyo will split it 50-50 unless you ask for it another way. And then just look at the results after the campaign's deployed. And in that instant, open rate would be the thing that would be most important, because that's where the difference would be.
Great, great. All right. We'll give the people another minute here. Any further questions? All right, Kevin is asking, cost for the tools. He says, cost is heavily dependent on the specific platform and tools that are used. How much do you spend on email per customer? Which tools?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, as we went through the tools, MailChimp is free up to 2,000 subscribers. And then from there, every tier, I think it's about every additional 500 that you add, the pricing will go up a little bit. Klaviyo is free up to 499 subscribers. And then after that, every tier, it will increase in price a little bit. HubSpot also has a free version, and it just reduces the amount of functionality that you have with the tool. And then as you move into needing more functionality, that's where their pricing changes. And in Constant Contact, similar to MailChimp in terms of having a free option and then increasing pricing by number of subscribers. But I'd say all of these platforms that we talked about are really transparent in their pricing. So you can go on their website and see how many subscribers do you have and what that would cost you.
Michelle asks, what are the best days and times to send out newsletters?
Yeah, so that's a question where it depends, and definitely going back to testing. So you can test in terms of time of day, like maybe you split your list 4 ways and you have a morning, afternoon, evening type of send, and see which performs best for you. And same with day of the week that you can test, like Monday versus Tuesday, or maybe you want to know weekdays versus weekends to see how it goes. But yeah, it's different for every brand and always test. But I would say in the world of digital that we've living now that people check their email all the time, especially during work hours, that we're starting to not see huge differences in terms of performance based on day of week or time of day.
Well, that's interesting. All right. These are great questions, folks. So keep sending them in. David wants to know, if I send email from my regular Gmail account, can I attach pictures or does that go to junk mail? And what about HTML?
So if you're sending email from your regular Gmail and you're trying to use it as email marketing, I would definitely advise against that, especially if people start marking it as spam, your personal email or your work email is not going to stop being received by anybody. So it's going to be better to be on some type of platform, as well as platforms give you the ability to measure those results. Like you can get that open rate, click rate, deliverability if you're going to go on a platform. But if you're just emailing a few people and it's friends, your personal email or your work email is fine.
Great, great. And I would add too that on personal email, there's a limit to the amount of recipients that you can send one as well. All right. Any more questions coming in? Well, Megan, that might be it.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this was helpful. I'm always glad to share information. You guys can reach out to me or anybody at SBDC for more questions. I think John will probably be sending over the content as well. So hopefully it's helpful. And thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much, Megan, for putting this together. I think this was really, really awesome, very useful presentation. And the folks can head to your website to find out more about your company and connect with you, right? Labyrinth.digital. And everybody should know, of course, that we offer free one-on-one business consulting. So you can head to our website as well, northmetrosbdc.com, and you can make an appointment with any of our consultants. I'd be happy to sit down, look at your business, work on any goals that you have, whether that's something to do with your legal structure, something to do with your marketing, something to do with finance, startup. We know everything about it. So we'll pair you with someone who can help you. Couple of exciting programs that are coming up. You definitely do want to go to our website and check out. We have Entrepreneurship for Creatives. This is a 5-week series that starts soon. So head to northmetrosbdc.com, go to the upcoming programming section, and you can find out about that in a free info session on Wednesday. We also have our Leading Edge class, which is a 9-week series. It's going to cover everything you need to know to get started in business. And we have a free info session about that tonight. So you can find out about that on our website as well. And finally, of course, if you go to northmetrosbdc.com, you can sign up for our email list and get on our weekly email newsletter to find out more about this, and so you won't miss any of our programming.